That is the premise behind ELATE. We're either growing or dying. We're either courageously stepping forward and expanding our life, or we are shrinking our life to keep it safer and avoid. And the more we age, the more we have to consciously and intentionally not surrender to our fear mind, because our fear mind will shrink our world. My name is Blum, and this is The Whole Soul Way. It's my signature program that I've been teaching for the past 4 years, and I decided to offer the foundation lessons, exercises, and tools for free on YouTube and all of the major podcast channels, because I truly believe that the world needs more of us, healed, whole, authentic, and awake. And you know what? I don't want to be a barrier to anyone getting the help that they need. And in fact, I really want to be part of the change. Each lesson builds on the last. So if this is your first time here, make sure that you start at the beginning. This is your invitation. Show up, do the work, and join the movement of souls who are committed to creating a better world, one inner transformation at a time. Let's dive in. Welcome to step 4 along our Whole Soul Way journey. In this step, I'll be revealing 3 really important things. Now, one of them you already saw a sneak peek at, and another one I have mentioned here and there. But this is the official reveal, which is the Soul Way GPS, which is the actual process that we have already been going through and that you will be using over and over and over again to understand your own internal GPS, your own internal guidance system. You're also going to be getting access to the Trigger Trail Buddy, which is, think about that as like one of the most important tools for self-inquiry that you would be using. It's a self-coaching tool. It's literally a process you can go through as if you were sitting in front of a coach or a therapist who would be guiding you through a process to discover more about yourself and to do healing work. And you don't have to pay for a session every time. And the last thing is the dialogue quadrant, which is an amazing tool that came out of working with people. It started out one way and then it's evolved into this new form, which has been an amazing resource for people. You'll see people referring to the dialogue quadrant throughout the program because it's super useful for you to be able to talk to all of your individual parts inside of you. So I'm excited to reveal this to you today because I really feel like this is the time when we tie together everything that we've been doing. But let me just do a quick recap. So initially, if you recall, in step 1, we needed to calm down. Our ego had been running the show, and it was our time to ask our ego to step in the backseat and let us take the lead in our lives. So that was the beginning of us helping her to see that she no longer has to do it all and that we're here. We, as the adult selves, are here. And then we started to look for ways that our ego could show us the places in us that were wounded, the places where we've cut off from, the places in us that we had to reject. And that was in step 2. And we started to use our ego as a way shower, our inner protector as a way shower. And all the ways that we use coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms and use all of those as mechanisms to be able to find the holes inside of us, those wounded parts, the parts of us that want to come into wholeness. And then we stepped in as our inner adult in a more official way. So we had already met our inner protector. We started dabbling a bit in the inner child, and our inner adult comes in and says, I'm here now. And we are going to step into greater leadership in our life. And so you, inner child and inner protector, don't have to be running the show anymore. You don't have to be feeling like you have to be the one, either the inner child screaming out for my attention, adult self's attention, or the inner protector feeling like you're the one that needs to protect because there's no adult here doing that. And so we started to talk about the mountain metaphor, and not only from the perspective of becoming the adult who is standing at the top of our own mountain and exploring our own mountain, but also from the perspective of taking a view from a higher vantage point. And so now we start to tie it all together. And I want you to think about this as that everything you have been doing up until now is absolutely in the realm of parenting yourself. It is in the realm of inner child work and shadow work and healing. It is the realm of unhooking from our conditioning and our programming and fear.
We're just now putting some words around it to give you a more clear process so that you can use that process to work through problems for the rest of your life. So this is really just taking the actual inner guidance system that you have and me putting words around it for you. And then you're going to have some tools as well to be using along this journey. So in this lesson, we're going to talk more about self-leadership, and we're going to talk about these tools. We're going to define some really important words for you that maybe you've been getting a little bit of a sense of what they are, but we're going to define them a little bit more clearly. And I'm excited to hear what you think about it. I would invite you to make sure that you have done at least one trigger trail buddy and worked through that process, and at least one dialogue quadrant, because those are going to become instrumental tools for you. And what I don't want you to get into a situation is that you don't do it and then you keep procrastinating on it and you don't get the benefits from it, because it is really, really useful. Now, some people have told me that they don't feel as comfortable writing. You don't have to write a lot of stuff. You can really write just a couple of sentences. It's not how much you write, though for some people it is. It's really just the quality of your inquiry. And your inquiry will get better over time. And another thing that I want to invite you to do if you really don't like writing and you don't like typing is that you can also just do voice recording or find a friend who will ask you the questions and then you can answer them out loud to them. So you would basically take something like the Trigger Trail Buddy and you would ask the questions for that person and hold space for them and witness them. Now, one thing that I would invite you to do if you do that is to make sure that they give you enough time so that you can go a little deeper in each inquiry. Writing sometimes does tap into the part of us that allows us to go a little bit deeper. So that's another option for anyone who's finding that they're a little bit resistant because of the writing aspect of it. All right, so I'm very excited. This is a very exciting time for us.
We've gone through this over and over again. And the thing I want to emphasize here is that we're here to grow ourselves up. Yes. We're here to create inner safety. Yes. But the thing that's most important is that this is a process. We're learning a process and a journey. We're learning how to use our soul way GPS to guide ourselves and to allow life to constantly be showing us what it is that's next for us on our healing journey. And this is the journey we're on. The journey is from this more unconscious mind, the places where the ego is in the driver's seat, and we have a lot of holes that we don't even know about. And we're moving to this more internally focused, conscious, and heart-centered, or actually integrated between heart and mind, and a place of more wholeness, knowing how to fill ourselves up and cultivate inner safety so that we can be brave and confident and we can unleash ourselves into this beautiful world we live in and feel safe enough to do that. Last time we were talking about the mountain metaphor and this idea that we are the mountain and all the different ways that we can look at the mountain, right? Yes, higher vantage point, greater perspective, and all of that. But also this idea that when we explore our own mountain, we are able to discover more about ourselves, that we can go on this mission to go find all of our alienated and abandoned parts and reclaim them into wholeness. And that our mountain, as we explore it, becomes more and more wholeness, awareness. I am always a little hesitant to say that it's an ascension because it's also an expansion. It's also a deepening, but an ascension to some degree to become a greater witness to our own life, and then also to see a witness to life itself. The goal today is to understand the soul way GPS. We're going to go into self-leadership and talk about the spiral of healing and the levels of the soul way GPS. Then we're going to reflect on what we've learned and then talk about what we're going to be learning. We have talked a lot about emotional triggers. It's not the first time, but because we're going to talk this time about triggers, I want to make sure that we remember what it is. This time, we're going to focus on triggers more in general, but also the very specific idea of a trigger that is we are being triggered to our past, okay? The concept of an actual emotional trigger. So I want you to think about a trigger as something that happens in the present, but our brain interprets a similar situation in the past and then connects it. And it's usually some place where we have unresolved business, trauma, something that we haven't healed, something that's stuck in us. And Gabor Mate talks about this all the time. And I love this idea of a trigger on a gun. If you push it and there's no explosive material in it, it does nothing. The only reason why we explode, or it might feel like we explode even if we retreat, is because we have explosive material in us. which is our holes, our pain, our wounding, our trauma. So I want to just explain something to you that even if you don't notice the deeper pain, the pain of feeling less than or afraid or helpless, it's there. So what usually happens is something happens in the outside world and boom, imagine it touches your hole and you're like, ow. And then your inner protector comes up and is they're the problem. Fight them, get out there, go take care of that thing. But just so you know, it could be that person is actually legitimately doing something wrong and you have to set a boundary. But often we don't really know for sure until we've done this inner work to clear it up, to go, is this my past or is this really a dangerous situation that I'm in? Is there really a threat or is this an emotional threat? Is this really a dangerous situation or is this unresolved business from my past? And sometimes it takes a little time to work through and get clear on that. Some people say it's 80% the past and 20% the present. I never want to discount that there's something happening in that present time. It's just a lot of times we're not seeing clearly because we're looking through the lens of our past. The reason why we use trailheads is because our protector is so fast and so strong that we often don't ever see the underlying feelings. We only see the outward reactivity, whether it's withdrawal or it's yelling or it's blame or it's defensiveness, whatever it is, numbing, withholding love. We see the external manifestation of it. And most people stop there. They just believe that they're right and they believe that trigger is telling the truth, when actually that's your inner protector speaking. And underneath it is this little girl, this pain, this wound, this young part of you that's like, ouch, ouch, ouch. Could you please see me? But we are focused, no, they did this. And we're looking at another person's mountain. And this work is to come back and look at our own mountain and see the underlying stuff, because if we never get to the underlying feelings, we actually can't heal it. So the cool thing is that these trailheads give us the GPS coordinates and tell us exactly where to go. And that's the beauty. We've talked about this before, but we're going to go more into this in the next lesson, which is the little child quite literally does live inside of us. You may say literally, no, not literally, but as literal as you possibly could be, because our mind, our psyche holds this inner child, and it's made up of countless parts of ourselves that have been present ever since we were conceived. And by the way, even if you don't know they're there, they are there. They're just in your unconscious mind. So they're still existing. And everyone has a gazillion parts. I like to categorize them into the inner protector, the inner child, and the inner adult, only because it makes it easier to talk about this. But any one of those has aspects. The deepest pain that we experience is cutting off from our own inner child within. And every time that we take the bait of our trigger and believe that it's something out there, we turn away from her. And it happens to all of us. We take the bait all the time when actually it's looking internally and being like, oh, my poor little girl who felt a little bit upset there. So what happens is every time that we get triggered, it's showing us the breadcrumb trail back to ourselves if we do it. So our inner child, when young and unhealed, is super needy. One of the things that I want to say, though, that I feel a lot of people disagree with me on, but I have seen it for myself and I've seen it for my clients, is that we do not stay as inner children. Our inner child grows up. That's what integration is. We come to our inner child who's wounded, but as soon as she feels heard and seen, and that we meet her, she actually grows up. She's not having to stay in that space anymore. She's not having to jump around trying to get our attention anymore. And we do become a more integrated being over time. And so I believe our inner child grows up. Does it mean that we can't be childlike? No, absolutely. We will be childlike. And there might be new places that get revealed to us over time, new inner child parts that we haven't actually discovered yet. But the one we discover, if we go in and we really do the healing work, and it might be a spiral, but if we do the healing work, eventually she grows up. In your workbook is a picture to show you. The inner child is made up of multiple parts. We talked a lot about wounded inner child. The protector or manager parts are where I call the inner protector. I consider it both. I just want you to know I pulled some of this stuff from internal family systems, parts work. Then we talked about shadow parts, which, by the way, many of these other parts, like your wounded inner child, can be in the shadows. And then playful innocence, that can be in the shadows as well. But you want to know that your inner child is made up of lots of different things. We are multifaceted beings, and that's what makes us amazing. John Bradshaw is one of the pioneers in learning how to do inner child work. He says the greatest wound a child can receive is the rejection of his authentic self. And I think that is absolutely true and very hard not to do so. When a parent cannot affirm his child's feelings, needs, and desires, he rejects that child's authentic self, and then a false self must be set up. But I also want to say that is true. And it is incredibly hard in a world where we also need to condition our children to be acceptable in society and be able to go to school. It's hard. So this is why we have to do this work and not judge ourselves for having to do this work and not judge anyone else. It brings me to this concept of parenting ourselves. Other people, you may hear them call reparenting. This is the reality. None of us are emotionally and psychologically adults when we hit 18. And some people say, oh, when you're 26, or some people say 35. I'm going to tell you, I'm 52 and I'm just barely feeling like I'm there. So I think it's a constant journey. And what I believe is that we need to pick up where our parents left off. And I want us to start teaching our children that they have to step in as their own inner parent, and that the transition period between 18 and 26 is actually the transition period where we pass the baton to our children. And we say, it is now upon you to parent yourself. And we teach them how. No parent gets it all right. Do you know anyone who has gotten it all right with their children? Come on. And what is all right? And how can we blame a parent? Yes, we all should do as much as we can to do our inner work. But how can we blame a parent who they themselves didn't get what they needed? We can interrupt these patterns by taking responsibility for ourselves and then loving ourselves the way we most needed then and most want now, filling our own unmet emotional needs. So most of us are doing is going around looking for other adults to fill our unmet emotional needs. I know I feel the pull all the time to have my husband, can't you just make me feel good? My inner child needs you. But actually what we're really longing for is to do this for ourselves. Sometimes I want him to do this, but it's his exact challenge is that he can't give that to me for some reason. So then I'm forced to have to do the work for myself. And I could be mad at him for not doing that. Or I could say, thank God he didn't do it, because I'm learning how to be able to provide for myself that which I really want to be able to provide for myself. And then everything that I get with him is icing on the cake. So what do? We have to attune to ourselves. Like when we touch our hands gently, when we tune into our hearts. And then what we do is we create secure attachment within ourselves. Secure attachment is talked about often as something that you have with your parent. I actually believe that's not really what secure attachment is. I believe secure attachment is having a parent who facilitates the preservation of their connection to self. I believe that's what secure attachment really is. It is facilitated through the parent-child relationship, but I don't believe that it's purely a parent-to-child thing. I think it's the parent holds space for that child to maintain their authentic self and their connection to self without having to turn away and orient toward taking care of the parents' needs. I'm sure it's a little bit of both. What we know for sure is that when a child is raised to be able to rest in the safety of their parents and that their parents fulfill their dependency needs, they become more independent. A lot of people don't want to fulfill their children's dependency needs because they think they're going to create a dependent child, but it is the exact opposite. They need to be filled, they need to be whole, and then they get to be free in the world. That's what we have to do for ourselves if we didn't get that. I just want to say that I never want to discount safety as something that we all need. I believe we all need safety, but the question really is, where are we sourcing it from? We are so often wanting other flawed humans to be able to provide to us safety, but that's almost impossible. They don't even feel safe in their own body and their own lives. So where do we source it from? We have to start to cultivate that safety from inside. That's what we're all doing here. And then sourcing from there, and maybe sourcing from something bigger than us. In the bottom right-hand corner, I put down some names of bodies of work that I've been trained under and that I've studied under. And what I want you to know is that I'm not here telling you my way is the right way. I'm telling you that I am going to do the very best that I can to try to articulate what it is to parent ourselves and keep on evolving in that. And even these experts in it are still learning how to do it because it's new and we don't really understand it. But those are some opportunities for you to be able to explore becoming a whole person is another thing I want to define. I love this definition by Dr. Barry Kaufman in the book Transcend, which is the process of becoming a whole person is an ongoing journey of discovery, openness, and courage in which you reach higher and higher levels of integration, harmony within yourself and with the outside world, allowing greater flexibility and freedom to become who you want to be. We learn to accept our whole self, not just our best self. Okay, so it's really this process of integration, process of returning to really our fundamental wholeness instead of how our psyche has fragmented us. The thing that I love about this is that the word whole and holy and heal all come from the same root. And what happens is when we come into wholeness, we belong to reality. What that means is we are no longer doing all the things that we do to try to avoid facing reality, and we come into acceptance of our lives as it is, rather than trying to magical thinking of what we want it to be. Let's just talk for a moment about the concept of self-leadership. When we step in as the leader of ourselves, we do have to accept that no one can save us and that we are who we've always needed. So what we do is we become the leader of our inner journey and of our life, and we step fully into our adult self and we raise our inner child. We have now adopted a child, and now we come in as that adult self. Let's talk about 100% responsibility. 100% responsibility means that you take ownership for your life, no more and no less. So you don't go into someone else's life and try to control and change, but you don't also abdicate responsibility and expect somebody else to do something for you. You stand in your 100% responsibility. You explore your part in the pattern that you're in. Okay. We own our victim's story and where we're really empowered. We don't deny anything. We really explore our part in every pattern. We own, or some people call it, we eat our projections. I actually like the eating our projections idea. You're like, okay, I'm going to take them back in again, but we own our projections and we integrate our shadow. So what we're doing is become this more whole and complete version of ourselves. And then this enables us to really become a true leader of ourselves. Hey there, Deb here. Just one quick interruption. If you've been diving into the Whole Soul Way round 1, the foundation and core lessons, and you're finding that it's really resonating with you, that is amazing. Now, some of you will get so much out of this free content, and that will be enough. But if you ever feel called to take it deeper, or you think you'd like a little bit more support, just know that there is a whole journey waiting for you inside our full program. Joining the full Whole Soul Way container means that you'll be part of a community, not just any community, a community of people who are incredibly committed to their journey, who are engaged, empathetic, and so inspiring. And this community and my leadership means that you get more support and contextualization to your own life. Also, you'll have access to rounds 2 and 3 and future rounds that I create, where we take what you've learned in the foundations and then practice applying it to the nuance of our lives. We experience deeper embodiment of the healing, and it really allows us to step more fully into this way of living. This is really where the deeper transformation unfolds, when you have the support you need, community, in a container that's really sacred and safe. So if this is speaking to you, I definitely would say check out the full program and see if and how we could support your growth on an even deeper level. You can check it out at thewholesoulway.com/program. Okay, let's get back to it. There's something called the Loving Alpha, which is by Gordon Neufeld, and whole episode on it in my parenting podcast that I did a couple of years ago. And the idea is that your child gets to feel you as that you are the solution. So rather than you have the solution, you are the solution. I want you to think of yourself as your own loving alpha to yourself, which is you are your solution. The connection between you and you, that's what you're longing for. But it's not always easy to do it. And then through self-leadership, we get to choose how we show up in the world and make choices, and we take responsibility rather than waiting for anybody else to do it for us. This journey that we're on is literally like for the rest of your life. It's really showing you how to navigate your life for the rest of your life. And the stuff we've been doing from the beginning when we started to now has been really setting the stage for the first 2 steps along the Soul Way GPS. We have been practicing finding trailheads, and we have been practicing going inside. Here's our beautiful Soul Way GPS. And I want to walk through that with you right now. Let's look at the top of this. The top that cuts across the finding a trailhead and showing up. Those two are in the exterior world. So trailheads come from living life, right? Stuff happens and it gives us fodder for our growth. And then that says go inside. So then we go underneath the line to interior. What can I learn from this? And then we move over to parent yourself. We're like, how can I experience myself and feel and heal? I'm still underneath. And now I come back into the world and I experience life through action. So let's talk about how this works. We start with an inner upset that happens, right? Something happens outside. We get either triggered or we get agitated or we feel judgmental, whatever it is. And that shows us a hole. Life's always showing us these holes. And that's where we find the trailhead. Once we find a trailhead, and by the way, this is a list of many of the trailheads, but you guys know the list is long. It's avoidance, it's masks, it's food, it's armor, it's painful thoughts, it's stories. It's basically any time that you're suffering, that is a trailhead. So then we come around to go inside. And this is where we care for ourselves. We safely explore our holes. This is where we're regulating our nervous systems, repositioning our ego into the back seat or into the backpack, turning toward the discomfort. Our natural tendency will always be to avoid discomfort. So we have to bravely remember the hardest step on here is to go upset. Oh yeah, this is a trailhead. Okay, I need to go inside. That's the hardest step. Once you step over the threshold of that, then the work is, yeah, it might be hard, but you're now in it. Now you've made a commitment to it. This is where we take responsibility for ourselves. And this is where we reframe our focus away from self-improvement or other improvement, trying to control another person. We move away from that to self-acceptance, because that's the first step. Self-improvement actually happens in the show up stage. Because that's not like there's never a place for self-improvement, but there's no place for self-improvement in the go inside and the parent self places. This is always going to be about acceptance. This is when we've been doing things like journaling and your self-inquiry worksheets, listening to the calming your ego meditation, using mantras, holding our inner child. It's the beginning of parenting ourselves. Then we move over to filling our holes. This is where we love ourselves. We come into acceptance. This is where we experience what it was like as a little girl to not get our needs met. And we step in as our parent, take the lead of our lives. We come in with curiosity and compassion and care. The biggest mistake I see people making is that they don't step in as their inner adult. So they basically come in this enmeshed or like unclear place where their inner child is having all these feelings, but still feels alone, just like she did when she was little. We have to really keep practicing stepping in as our inner adult. It's almost like between go inside and parent self, there needs to be the mountain metaphor, right? Where you go, okay, I'm going to rise up and I'm going to be holding all of this. This is where we listen internally. We go into self-inquiry. We give her what she needs and we reclaim parts. This is the place of self-love. And then we come around and go back out into the world again. So we don't emphasize as much time in the show up stage here, but that doesn't mean that it's not absolutely critically important. This is where we go out and we bring new things out into the world. And any one of you who's doing something, whether it be to have these difficult conversations, but then it brings up more emotions, or when she stood up for herself and then the things that she was feeling afterwards, any one of you, once you go into the world to take the action and maybe putting duct tape over your mouth and not saying something when you're feeling reactive, whatever brave thing we do, that's in the show up phase. Okay. We show up at these new levels of consciousness and wholeness and self-love. And that's where we're courageous and take risks. This is where the concept of we get what we're committed to comes in, and we're taking responsibility for our lives, where we're disrupting our patterns and we're using boundaries. This is where we push up against our edges to find more of who we are, but also to be more of who we are. But what happens when we go there? We start living from wholeness, be more of ourselves, but then naturally, people aren't going to like it. They're going to react. They're going to judge us. And guess what happens? We're getting another trailhead. We're going to find another hole, because that's what happens. It isn't just a one and done thing. As you do your healing work and you put yourself out into the world, you're going to go to a new level of showing up, and more triggers are going to show up. And then we go around and around, and this is how it looks in its more comprehensive way. Our main focus, as I said, has been in finding trailheads and going inside. Next, we'll be focused on parenting yourself and showing up. Let's talk about the spiral of healing. The way that I see this is like this. I did not invent the concept of spiral of healing, by the way. It's like a thing that a lot of healers will talk about, basically, that we're using the soul way GPS, but we're going around. And as we go around and around, where the circle represents us, and we are expanding, we're deepening, we're ascending, we're including. Okay. And the reason why I like the circle is because it's a great metaphor for wholeness. And this spiral of healing, yes, we're doing this, but we're also deepening ourselves, right? We're not just going up. We're not just going wider. We're not just going up. I think it's just important to remember this, because it's so easy to get caught up in somehow thinking you're not at the right place, that you should have arrived somewhere. You shouldn't be going through this again. We even meet the same trigger over and over again on the spiral of healing, because you're meeting it at a new level of consciousness. It's like a new level of you being more willing to go deeper into it. And my therapist used a pencil metaphor like this. Like the old ones seem to have had more like cracks in it. Maybe we use them longer. I don't know why. They don't seem, maybe they've just made them better, but they don't have cracks. But they used to have cracks in them. And some cracks would go all the way down on the whole pencil, and some would do little ones, and some would be deep, and some would be shallow. That's what she would say. You go around and around. Some of your things are going to be like low hanging fruit, easy to go through. You're going to see it. It's just going to be done. You're never going to ever meet it again. Some are going to be with you your whole life, because those soul lessons are really deep and they're going to take time. It's okay. Don't judge. Sometimes you're going to learn how to jump over your crack, your hole. Sometimes you're going to fall right into it. And it's going to depend on where you are in your journey. And there is no right or wrong. But here's what happens on the situational level. If you look down at the spiral of healing, if you're looking down at it, you got the soul way GPS that you're going to go around and around in. Okay. But on the life level, the other cool thing is that you will achieve mastery over these steps. So at some point, you're going to have so much self-awareness. It's going to be easy for you to turn inward. You're going to have mastered that. That's not going to be the thing that's difficult for you anymore. But you might find it's still difficult to parent yourself. But eventually you start to get really great at the parenting yourself, and you move up the hierarchy there. And then eventually you get really great at showing up as your true self. And eventually you're actually flowing with great ease with your soul as your true guide. So some of this is happening every time you go around and around, but also you are getting more skillful at each of the stages as well. Which brings us to talking about the integrated brain. Now we're bringing in this beautiful emotional brain. The emotional brain is amazing. In fact, it's what makes us a mammal. It gives us our emotions. It's that relational center of our brain. So we want to be integrated. So we bring our emotional brain in, and rather than saying we're going to live from one part of ourselves, we start to say we want to live from our entire brain, our entire nervous system, our heart, our body, our soul, our guts, all of it. Because often we're cut off when we're just living from our head, which is really often amygdala centered. So we're trying to bring online our prefrontal cortex. Some people will say to me that they're in their emotional brain a lot, but I think a lot of times it's still coming from fear. It's still coming from the reaction to the outside world. I think the highest level of being in your emotional brain would be more like you're feeling, but they're just flowing through you. Like something happens, you feel some sadness, but it moves through you. You feel joy, it's like moves through you. What happens to us often is we're stuck in places like fear and contraction. And that's because we haven't really gotten to the deeper emotion. And that's what we're trying to do when we meet our inner child, is go to what she's really feeling. I have to keep hammering this home, which is the beauty of our built-in guidance system, which I call the soul way GPS. We will call it the soul way GPS here. There are so many ways you can do healing work. I have done so many things, between like Reiki and working with astrologists, to EMDR trauma healing, to EFT, to talk therapy and somatic experiencing, all this stuff. And I will want you to trust your own guidance. This is not meant to say you work with me for the rest of your life. I'm teaching you a system so that you get to the point where you see these trailheads. Not only do you see trailheads guiding you into yourself, but you also are following your own intuitive guidance on what's next for you on your healing journey. That if you need to work with someone on a particular level of healing, or you need to go to somebody as a coach in this particular space, that you know that. And in between sessions, with whomever you're working with, you get to go deeper into your own work. You're not lost and waiting. I remember I used to wait until my therapy appointment before I could deal with it. Instead, you start doing your inner work and you come to them and you have so much more to work on. So I just think it's the best. Also have to be careful to not jump off of a track because it got a little too scary or too deep. This kind of speaks to the jumping off the track. When you face a trailhead, what do most people do? They either are like looking at the other person's mountain. They need to change this. They need to do that. If they would just do this, right? They go, I don't know if this is really the trail I want to go on, which, by the way, one of the cool things about this is that you don't actually have to take a trailhead if you don't want to. You can decide that the timing is not good. No, I can't. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to compartmentalize and do that one later. You can do that. Sometimes they will torture you, but another one that people will do is pull out a map and try to find another trail. I never want to go down that trail. They follow the path that everyone else is taking. They take the path and don't bring their GPS and have no idea where they're going. So they're just like, what's next? Oh, God, it's painful here. Oh, or they go back to base camp and they vent. And venting in of itself is not bad as long as it's a pathway to you finding your trailheads and then going inside. But the simplest answer is to go inside. But it's the hardest thing. But it's so easy. 2 words. Go inside. And yet it'll be very hard. Winston Churchill tells us fear is a reaction, courage is a decision. To me, the most courageous decision we can make is to notice the fear and say, hello, fear, and not let fear own us, and then to turn toward it. That's the courage. We keep on practicing going inside. Mel Robbins tells us pain doesn't hurt as much when you stop avoiding it. And let me just tell you, there are studies done that talk about physical pain, that the most painful part about physical pain is actually our contraction around it and the resistance. And I really believe that about emotional pain. Emotions are meant to have like 90-second arc. If you really fully feel a feeling, you'll feel it and go through it, and then it'll come through the other side. But the reason why feelings are stuck is because we're stuck in thought and story and all the other stuff. We're stuck in the past, playing out the future. And so it's all kinds of thoughts around the feeling, and they keep us locked in. And then the more we can go beneath all that, peel back all those layers and go, oh, inside there, oh, that's just that sweet, sad part of me that never got that thing. We start to be able to let them go. Here are some of the questions about self-reflecting on your own relationship with pain. What did you learn about negative emotions, discomfort? Did you learn to avoid it? How do you currently deal with negative emotions? What do you think that you needed as a child that you never received? Where in your life are you not showing up fully or not taking full responsibility for your life, your needs, your emotions? And what do you keep getting a nudge to do, but you don't do it? Remember, we talked about wholeness, which includes the integration of our polarities. Polarities can cross the board on so many things when you think about polarities, but think about your inner masculine and your inner feminine. So we think about a woman is feminine and a man is masculine. It's not true. Within all of us is masculine energy and feminine energy, yin and yang. I like to think about from an inside perspective that your inner mother is the feminine energy of parenting yourself, the nurturing, and your inner father is the masculine, the showing up energy. All right, so think about this. This is very stereotypical, but I'm still going to do this from within us. I think the mother is often soothing them, accepting them unconditionally, listening, welcoming their feelings. And that's in an ideal world, right? But that's what we think about. Like the mom nurtures. And then the dad is the one that's get out there and do stuff like linear, do better. I love you, but I want you to do better. Encouragement, a lot more about protection and boundaries and manage your emotions, right? The inner mother is a little more like, bring them on. I want to hold them. The inner fathers do better. And many of us may have embraced an inner father more than an inner mother. And that's why I called this soul nurturing, because it's so much of cultivating this nurturance in us before we can go back out there and get shit done. We are going to first embrace and embody the inner mother. And then we are going to embrace and embody the inner father. And I want you to look at this at some point to see there are healthy traits of the feminine and the masculine, but there are also shadow traits, which, by the way, we need to love. And we also have to recognize that we sometimes categorize people in those unhealthy, toxic areas, but that there is really so much more to the feminine and the masculine. It's in the workbook. Take some time and we'll go over it more in the future. Brene Brown tells us we can choose courage and we can choose comfort, but you cannot choose both. And that is the premise behind ELATE, right? We're either growing or dying. We're either courageously stepping forward and expanding our life, or we are shrinking our life to keep it safer and avoid. And the more we age, the more we have to consciously and intentionally not surrender to our fear mind, because our fear mind will shrink our world. So that's why elating is so important, so that we keep each other on task in this way, so that we can expand our lives and live as fully as possible. The practice is Soulway GPS first. And that is going to be the hardest practice of your life, is to not get tricked into believing that the problem is going to get solved through willpower. Not that I don't love willpower, because I do, but or through you tolerating it or you having a thought through plan. It's no, first go within.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the practice that's the hardest practice. And the first step to that is probably always going to be some form of self-inquiry journaling, their dialogue quadrant or something. When in doubt, pull out a dialogue quadrant. Okay, well, that's a wrap on that steps foundational lesson. Let's just pause for a moment though, because this next part matters more than you might realize. You've just absorbed some powerful lessons, and I know how tempting it is to just hit next and keep learning, to gather more knowledge and more insights and more understanding. I know that feeling, but here's the truth. I've learned in my own experience and after years walking alongside many people on this journey, wisdom without action is just information. And information alone doesn't change our lives. Think of it like this. You wouldn't go to the gym, watch someone else lift weights and expect to get stronger. The transformation happens when you pick up the weight. These exercises, well, they're your weights. They're where the real work and the real magic happens. So here's what I'm inviting you to do next. If you haven't already, go download the exercises workbook at thewholesoulway.com/workbooks. You'll notice that there are 2 workbooks available for each step, one with the lesson content and one specifically for exercises. Make sure you grab the exercises workbook, because that's where the inner work part of this lives. And here's something else important for you to know. Some of the exercises, they only appear in the workbook, and some of them only appear on audio or video, and that's why you need both. And for those of you who like guided experiences, I've also created some supporting meditations on Insight Timer. You can go to insighttimer.com/Deb Blum. Sometimes we need that gentle voice guiding us deeper, and I'm really excited that these meditations are now on Insight Timer for you as well. Now, I want to remind you of something I shared in the Why the Whole Soul Way episode, and that is about the universal law of fair exchange. This program is free, and I've made it that way intentionally because I believe everyone should have access to what I'm teaching. But energy still needs to be balanced so we don't sabotage our own potential for transformation. One of the most powerful ways that you can honor this exchange is by actually doing the exercises, by truly showing up for yourself, and by doing the inner work. That's the exchange. I give you the lessons, the tools, and the exercises, and you do the work. And that's how we keep this energy flowing. That's how we honor what we're creating together. And if you feel called, another beautiful way that you can balance this energy is to share it with somebody else that you feel could benefit from it. And I would love it if you would rate and review the podcast, or like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. This is the way that we can create ripples of transformation together. One awakened soul inspiring another. So before you go, remember that the next section includes both additional lessons that will help round out the foundational lesson and those transformational exercises. So go do them now while your heart is open and your commitment is fresh. Your transformation is waiting for you, not only in the next lesson, but in the work that you're about to do. So as you do the exercises, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to leave a comment on what you've learned, or what your experience is like. Okay, I'll see you in the exercises.